Teriyaki with a twist, or the classic chicken teriyaki. Top it with green pepper, onions, cheese, and that sweet onion teriyaki sauce, all piled on your favorite artisanal bread. Satisfy that craving with a footlong from Subway.
Fresh, delicious, tasty, meaty.
Let's make it a meal with a drink, chips, and cookies. There is nothing better than a footlong from Subway.
The traffic report is brought to you by Subway. Planning a meeting, event, or office celebration? Visit subway.ky to place your catering order today.
The Business Buzz is proudly sponsored by K-Man Medical Supplies. Call them at 949-6211. And K-Man Insurance Center, celebrating 45 years in the Cayman Islands, specializing in property, life, and other lines of insurance products and services. And 345 Equipment, quality machinery, parts, and repair services for all of your construction equipment needs. Call 525-0021 or email info@345equipment.ky.
And now, Radio Cayman presents The Business Buzz, an insightful and fresh take on a variety of issues that impact the local business environment. This is where we address the business topics that matter. Radio Cayman's Business Buzz. Here's your host, Anita Khan.
Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us on the Business Buzz on this beautiful Thursday morning. It's 17 and a half after 8 o'clock. This is our last show for 2022. We are 9 days away from Christmas Day, and today we invite you to come take a walk with us as we take a trip down memory lane as we present recollections of Cayman Christmases. From painting the house, backing stand, selecting Christmas trees from the land, marching the street with instruments and singing carols, to engage in beef for that Christmas feast, sand dances, Christmas church concerts, and just plain good togetherness with family and friends. Our guest in studio this morning, the former museum director, Miss Anita Banks, Mr. Loxley Banks, former director of Radio Cayman and the current host of Radio Cayman's CI Retro. Joining us later on this morning by telephone will be Captain Paul Horston. Good morning, Anita. Good morning, Mr. Banks.
Good morning.
Good morning, Paul. Paul is holding it down in the next studio. Susan is off on a few days, R&R. Good morning again. Now, Christmas time, an exciting time. Mr. Banks, you're fully loaded this morning.
With what?
With all the memories, you and Anita.
Well, you know, Christmas memories go way back to when the population was, as I remember hearing it quoted at about 5,000. This was 19 in the early 50s, late 40s.
Those had to be good days. 5,000 population, Anita. You agree?
Yeah, and
everybody knew everybody.
There was nothing.
Everybody's business.
There was nothing along 7 Mile Beach from where the beach started in West Bay, which was where our home was at, right on the beach there, clear up to what they call Haiti Bay, which would have been right around the area of the Pageant Beach or Wharf Restaurant, in that general area. But one building, the public bathhouse, which was right on the premises that the governor's residence stand on now.
It was a bathhouse.
And I think there was a little quarantine building somewhere right maybe around where Pageant Beach was at. Mm-hmm. But you looked up there, all you could see was tall casuarina trees and sand. Beach sand. Sometimes if you go on the beach 12 o'clock in the day, you couldn't. If you look down there, it was very glaring. You know.
I mean, with the sun just coming through.
And of course, like you say, everybody knew everybody, and one of the big thrills of those days was the seafarers coming back home. You know, they would always try to get back home for Christmas, but they didn't make it all the time because they were all over the world, you know, Shanghai, Barcelona, wherever you thought about, that's where they were at. And
so who made it home for Christmas? Got really lucky.
Until after the war, the major transportation between Florida, which was the getting off point to come over here, Tampa, was the Goldfield or some of the other schooners that might make the frequent trip. The Goldfield used to make regular trips. Sometimes we'd take her 3 nights out, three nights, 4 days. Sometimes it would take her 14 days, 15 nights.
Wow. Wow.
And on those 14 days, 15 nights, by the time she came around Northwest Point, you could smell the rotten Irish potatoes and smell the apples.
Oh man. So, and getting to the point now where, as you get home, you have to prepare for Christmas, or hopefully the people who are home were holding it down for Christmas. In preparation for Christmas Day, what were some of the chores that had to be completed to prepare for homes inside and outside for the big day? We'll go, Mr. Banks, first.
Oh, okay.
Well, I think one of the things was that it seems to me that the house had to be painted every year, every Christmas. I mean, I can remember my father coming home and bringing, I guess was probably half gallons or maybe gallons of paints. One of the ones that I remember specifically was Dutch Boy paints, which was...
You still have Dutch Boy now.
Okay.
Still a brand, yeah.
Which was, a major brand in those days. And, of course, back in those days, the paints had lead in it. They were mixed with lead. And of course... The sand yards, but Anita can jump in on the sand yards because she probably spent a lot of sand yards.
Yeah, we're not going to. Yeah, sand yards. Okay, all right. Your recollections, Anita.
Oh, well, we lived in our great grandmother's house. It was a wattle and daub house, and we had to tidy it and dust it because back in those days, it just had the kind of Dutch half windows that you just open. So, dust and even leaves or whatever insects could come in. So we
did you have to dab it? I mean, it's wattle and daub, so did you have to
I think my Uncle Booth and Uncle Val probably whitewashed the outside, but the inside we would clean and then make sure that any of the cracks in the wattle or in any of the wood or whatever was kind of filled in. And then we would collect then some fresh flowers from outside. My Aunt Lily had a lot of different type of oleander, color oleanders, and some of the flowers that I can't remember the name right now that she would bring in. And then they weren't really that big into sand, but we would bring some of the gravel that would wash up on the beach and put around in certain areas. It was more our Cousin Lassie and Cousin Myra that lived next door to us.
Where was the location of the house?
In South Sound, where Lassie,
Miss Lassie's house.
Miss Lassie's house is. We were to the left of her. They went all out with the sand and the gravel and the conch shells. I mean, that you see nearly there today. That's how it was. But then we would also rake up the leaves because it was a lovely almond tree and a sea grape tree, a white one, which was rare. I mean, people all over the island would come and collect the sea grapes. But the leaves, so we would rake those up, pull whatever, especially burrs. It was a lot of burrs in the sandy yard there. And I just really remember, it was great that it was this Christmas breeze kind of blew away the few little mosquitoes. But early morning, the dew would be so heavy, and it would be like a mist coming off of the swamp area there behind, South Sound. It was just really lovely. And, it was different from us. We had lived in New York. And then we came back to Cayman in the late 50s.
That's when you learned about the Christmas breeze.
Yeah, so everything was kind of new and exciting for us.
Okay. We've got Captain Paul on the line. Paul, Captain Paul, good morning, sir.
Good morning. How are you?
I am good. How are you? Glad to have you on the program this morning.
Thank you. Thank you.
Glad you can join us, Captain Paul. I know you have lots of memories as well, and we'll be happy to have you share them with us. So please stay on the line. You feel free to jump in at any time, okay?
Okay, I will.
Okay, and Anita, what are some of your memories pertaining to engaging Christmas beef, the food preparation, and the various foods that we have as part of the Christmas treat or Christmas meal in the Cayman Islands? Mr. Banks, you can jump into.
Yeah. Well, I guess my Uncle Val and Aunt Lily would have put in a request. But what's the word I've been thinking about? I know it was a word that you would use when you were going to, like, request or ask someone to keep whatever for you. But I can't remember.
Well, one of the common words was going to engage.
Engage. That's the word I was looking for.
Yes.
They would engage some fresh beef from one of the farmers that were butchering. I don't know, like whether Mr. MS or I think a few times we went into town at the market there. But, and then the ground provisions that they got to cook for the meal and to make the heavy cakes. And I would help them. I mean, we were rather small, but we would help grate the coconut, I think, along with some of my skin on my fingers. And then they would cook, they had a wood burning stove, and then later they had a kerosene stove. But we had, family that lived on both sides of us. So it wasn't just like the beef and the pork. I remember, like, Cousin Myra, she would cook this fresh bread in her Dutch oven pot. She would bury it in the ground with coals and then give us like a piece. Oh, that was delicious with her butter. And then Cousin Mattie, that was Nurse Merce's sister that had lived in Cuba. She would do something with corn that was kind of turned with pork in it. And then our Aunt Auda, sometimes she would visit from Honduras, and she would make her type of tamales, and then something nearly like a bala. But, it was big and so soft. And then my Uncle Booth, Mr. Loxley, you were talking about them coming from sea. Well, when he would come from sea, he would bring maybe, I remember, canned sweet corn or any kind of canned pears or peaches. And one time he had been in Japan and brought us different dolls and their kind of weaved work from there. And then I want to hear what Captain Paul, but I remember either Captain Paul or Captain Carl once gave us a taste of corn turtle. And then, of course, then there was swanky. We would get civil oranges from Mr. Lawrence and Miss Corrine. And then the brown sugar came from Cuba or Jamaica, and that really had a real strong scent, nearly like molasses. And then the cool cistern water added to it to make the drink. And then Nurse Morris, she even had a clay pot that would make it even cooler.
And I'm thinking, with that water, a little frog.
Could be a tadpole.
No, I think it was frogs.
Captain Paul? Captain Paul?
Yes, I'm right here.
Okay, engage in Christmas beef. What's your recollection?
Oh, yes, I remember that. It was once a year we got it. And we sure could enjoy it those days. But we didn't butcher any cows here in South Sound. I don't remember that, but we used to go to Georgetown to get our beef. But we used to have a lot of conchs and lobsters and fish. You go catch the fish you prepared to catch that day. Whatever you wanted, that's what you got. And it was, and then fixing up the yards, back in the white sand for the yards. And we had to get special conch shells because every year you had to change them because we couldn't afford have these faded ones around the place. And back the sand off the beach, the beach right where I was living, my old house there. And we got the sand started, and sometime in the 1st of November to bite the sand there and spray that. We got the rosemary brooms, and you swept that off so pretty, and come into the house. Then every year you painted that, but it was what we call whitewash. It was we used to the lime kiln. We used to build these kilns with stones or seed stones and grape wood, and burn them about 2 months before that, and got that white lime, we call it. Of course, we didn't have any brushes or anything like that those days. We used to make the brushes out of the thatched tree tops, and we used to put what they call it's a cactus scourgeoneel in it to keep it white.
Oh,
Yeah.
you know about that, Anita? Yeah. No.
Yes. So I said everything was spick and span. We had them in little piles of sand there, and the day before Christmas we sprayed them all out. It was white. The yard was really white and pretty, and you wasn't allowed to walk in it, of course.
Well, talking about that sand back in those, especially on nights like has been here over the last 10, 15, 20 days, when you had a bright moonlight, that was, prime sandbagging nights.
That's right.
Why did you bag them at that time of night, Mr. Banks? Somebody asked that question.
During the day it was pretty hot, especially between 9:30 and say 3:30, 4:30 in the afternoon. But a lot of those sandbagging excursions spurned romances. I mean, in West Bay, it was a common thing. You think she can back sand tonight? So, and
you might give the young people ideas, no, Mr. Banks?
Well, yes, I think you can still see some of the relationships are still strong and going. Emanating from those moonlight sandbagging evenings.
Moonlight,
and one of the ways to really get this thing going was you ask the young lady, I'm going to be there tonight to help you up. No,
Mr. Banks, it sounds like you had some dealings there, eh?
Well, I was a good help upper. But the help upper was the thing, because usually if the lady filled her basket, she didn't fill it. She didn't put the amount of sand in that she couldn't lift it. But if she said, well, "Come help me fill the basket," and if I was helping the lady fill the basket, I'd fill it up so I could have the help.
Oh my God, this is gonna stay with me for the rest of the year. That vision. Now, Captain Paul, when you after back in the sand, how the pathway going towards the door, say the front door, how was that decorated?
Well, that was lined with conch shells.
Okay.
Usually we had gravels in a little between the two outside and inside. We used to put gravels and that, so you didn't carry the sand inside.
Right.
If you had, that's if you had shoes to wear.
Okay. Okay.
It used to be a lot, and it used to be a lot of seashells that used to wash ashore those days. The sunbeams and different kinds of shells, especially after a northwest or something. That it was It was real nice. We were so poor, but we didn't realize it. We had to make our own toys. Like you got a shoebox, and you got some ball threads, and made a little wagon out of that. And then, if you were lucky enough to get what we call a hoop and swifter, that was a whole bicycle rim. Well, that was something.
A wheeler.
A wheeler. Big horse.
And the tops, Captain Paul, the gigs.
Oh yes, the gigs and the marbles and
Jacks.
And the slingshots and the bow and arrows and of course the kites. Everybody had to have a beautiful kite those days.
Right, you can't even hear a kite. And nowadays, I was thinking that the other day, but you mentioned the bow and arrow, and I believe that the introduction of that came from, I don't know if you remember, I remember him with the first movie that was showed in the West Bay Town Hall was called The Arizona Badman, and it was one of these cowboy things between Indians and cowboys, and the Indians was using the bow and arrow. And I tell you, usually it was probably on a Friday and Saturday night they showed the movie. That afternoon or Monday afternoon, Tuesday afternoon, out on our little playgrounds, every boy had a bow and an arrow, and they, the shamrock made a good bow. Yeah, it had a little elasticity in it. I think that's where that bow and arrow thing came in. That was Riley. You remember Riley?
Oh yes.
Captain Paul will ask you to hold the line because we've got to take a short break, okay? So just stay on the line for us. If you're just joining us, this is the Business Buzz, our final last segment for this year, for 2022. And we're having recollections of Cayman Christmases. In the studio, we have Miss Anita E. Banks, former director of the Cayman Islands National Museum. Joining us, Mr. Luxley Banks, former director of Radio Cayman and the current host of Radio Cayman CI Retro. And joining us by way of telephone, Captain Paul Hurlston. Thanks to our sponsors this morning of the Buzz, Cayman Insurance Center and Cayman Medical Supplies.
I'm Michael Webster.
And I'm Denise Brown of Cayman Insurance Center.
Family is not the most important thing, it's everything.
And for 45 years, we have worked with the community and their families on protecting themselves for the future.
Whether it's providing top-rated life insurance
or protecting your family's household investment.
From our family to yours, we understand and we care.
I'm Denise Brown. Call me at 814-7229.
And I'm Michael Webster at 925-5433.
We are Cayman Insurance Center,
specializing in property, life, and other lines of insurance products and services at an affordable rate. We are Michael and
Denise at Cayman Insurance Center.
Call today.
Now open on the sister island, Brack Medical Supplies. Everything from over-the-counter items to home care products such as wheelchairs, crutches, bed pads, adult briefs, and PPE items. Friendly, local, loyal, and long-standing service right in the Brack. Brack Medical Supplies. Call today at 948-2228. Better yet, come see us. We are located right next to the Alexander Hotel.
The Kirk Freeport Christmas Sweepstakes is back again, and for our 50th anniversary, we are giving away $50,000 in cash and prizes. Win one of three $5,000 cash prizes, a daily cash prize of $1,000, the Rolex draw on January 4th, or loads of other great prizes. Every purchase of $100 before noon on Christmas Eve qualifies for all remaining prize draws. Win your share of $50,000 of cash and prizes in the Anniversary Sweepstakes. Full details on KirkFreeport.com. Merry Christmas from everyone at Kirk Freeport.
Tune in every Monday through Friday at 12 p.m. for Radio Cayman's Midday Newscast. Radio Cayman, the People's Station, your trusted official source for the latest news. The 12 p.m. news is proudly brought to you by Health City Cayman Islands. World-class healthcare within your reach.
Business Boss. Business Boss with your host, Anita Khan.
Welcome back to the Business Buzz. Recollection of Cayman Christmases. That's what we're talking about this morning. Coming right up, we have a short edited narrative from some 43 years ago, focusing on Cayman Islands Christmas memories. You'll hear from 11 of the luminary Cayman Islands community stalwarts of the past, whose recollection will take us back some 225 years to Christmas celebration of those times. You are about to hear an edited version of Radio Cayman's Christmas Remembered program from 43 years ago. This program was produced by the late Doran Miller, former Deputy Director and Chief Editor at Radio Cayman. The voices you hear on this clip are those of Mrs. Ina Watler, Dr. Roy McTaggart, Mrs. Nina Connolly, Ms. Genevieve Bodden, Reverend Ruth Bauman, Mrs. Vita Marin Bodden, Mr. Ernest Panton, Miss Annie Halder Bodden, Mr. Willie Wood, Mr. Harrington Green, and Mrs. Nettie McCoy.
In my young days at Christmas time, we had things very simple, not like today. Of course, don't get me wrong, I'm pleased to know that people in these days are much better off financially than we were. But then I'd like to know that the people who are better off financially regarded it in a proper way and be wise in the way they spend their money and have things for Christmas. We didn't have a lot of things for Christmas like these children have these days. If we had a sixpence perhaps to spend, we thought we had money.
I think a lot of it was just celebrating, just enjoying themselves, seeing one another and having chat with one another and all that sort of stuff. It was one evening or one day in the whole year, plus Christmas Day, that the people really got very friendly with one another.
No, I don't think they had any more fun we had nowadays. We had a lot of fun in Christmas. See, that was the greatest fun. But go all around till the morning singing carols for the old people, dancing, waiting for Christmas Day to dawn, all around was happy. He that didn't have food, the next one would give him all he wants. That I believe they had good time.
I'm pretty sure they don't have the fun we had, because now you can get firecrackers year round, whereas we only saw firecrackers at Christmas time. A balloon was a novelty. When Mr. Franklin got in a little shipment and you heard he had balloons, I think they cost a penny halfpenny each, and my mother would give me a sixpence to go and get 4 balloons. That was the height of happiness.
In the last years, it's about commercialization, but in those days, it was a time of worship and a time of wishing one another a Merry Christmas, a blessed and a Happy New Year.
I recall that we were a very friendly, happy population. Doreen, you're perfectly right. I think the more money or the more equity or whatever we may refer to it as a person has, the more worries they have. However, I would say that in those days we were a real happy-go-lucky population.
In my younger days, I think there was a good deal more that, in a simple way, the children enjoyed than they do today. It had more value in a sense.
Christmas has become commercialized, and in a lot of cards we see a Merry Xmas, where the X means Christ out of it, just a must into it. And in those days, Christmas was really a reality, the festival of Christ's birthday. But now, Christmas has become too commercialized in every way, shape, and form.
People were poor those days, but there was a lot of Christianity, morality, humanity, and everything combined. Not only Christmas alone, but any time of the year, you go to one another's home and it was something for you to eat. Could sleep if you wanted.
I know we used to have a lot of fun and get along good. Everybody was happy. You go from one home to the other, and wherever you go, you was home. As happy as you could be. Nothing compared with those days.
Christmas 40 years ago, or 50 if you want to put it that way, to me was as it is today. It meant Christ in Christmas. And when you take Christ out of Christmas, you don't have any Christmas at all. Yes, I think a lot of Christ is gone out of Christmas today. Today Christmas is merely a celebration of a good time.
I can remember quite 40, 50 perhaps years ago, because I'm now 76, and in regards to preparation for Christmas, well, the moment one Christmas was over, preparation started then for the following one, especially with vegetables and fruits of all description, because the best had to be gathered at that time. So were the pigs, cows. They did eat meats, that is, beef and pork, during the year, but not half as much as they did in the Christmas, because there was plenty of other meats, with all kinds of fish, seafoods, which I believe up till now is still better than so much beef and pork. And then the land crabs, which is a luxury, and still is, in fact. And, as I said, they had special food provided, cakes, heavy cakes, pot cakes, and the houses and yards, of course, was brought up to a higher standard. All walls were whitewashed. White sand was brought and placed in certain positions and little piles all around the house. Everything was provided for that gala week. Sometimes it lasted more than a week.
In my days, when I was young, first thing we begin in November. All the children, not the old folk, we all go on the beach.
Okay. I'm pretty sure that you recognize some of the voices there on that clip.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. Now, thank you so much for that, Mr. Banks. That's quite a recollection.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the main focuses that you heard winding through all of those was the worship, the Christianity, and that's an aspect that maybe has slipping away from us fast, and it's very worrisome that it is.
Mm-hmm. Taking the Christ out of Christmas. Oh,
yeah,
yes.
You heard. I was Miss Annie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, could recognize her voice, yes. Mr. Ernest. Yes.
Yeah. Captain Hurlston?
Uh-huh.
Okay, you want to add anything to that recollection?
Yeah, well, that was Christmas Day, and the following day was Boxing Day. They used to have a little get-together in the town hall. They used to refer to it as the fancy dress party. You dressed up in all kind of uniforms or any old thing, something different, and somebody would always make a prize. Because I remember one time the late John Hines, he was dressed up as a fisherman, and he won the first prize.
What can you remember? What you went as?
I was a little boy. I was just about 3, 4, 5 years old or something. I don't remember what it was and how I got a little prize. I know that it wasn't much, but it was appreciated.
Well, in West Bay, right around Christmas time, let's say, 15th of December through 6th, 7th of January, it was all just a lot of celebration, and especially when they brought the cattle up from Swan Island, and that's a story all in itself. Swan Island for a long time was administered by two Caymanian families, the Gliddens, and Swan Island is a very small little piece of the rock, and the cattle that they raised down there just run wild. And when they caught these cattle and brought them up to Cayman, because usually they'd bring up, I'd say, half a dozen, steers ready to butcher for Christmas, and they'd bring them up. They'd have to bring up on the schooners, and I believe I'm almost sure that they must have had a little dock in Swan Island where they could, walk the cattle on board. But when they came to Cayman, West Bay, well, they unloaded them in West Bay, and they'd had to push the cattle overboard. The cattle overboard and hold the head up, because the cow don't swim that well. But anyway, and hold the head up on the catboat stern so that, you could get the cattle, get it ashore. And usually, like I said, these cattle was wild. Usually it took 2, 3 men with ropes to handle them, and they were big cattle. And when they came ashore, we called it the bull run, because they would actually chase you. And some was brave enough to put on something red or have a red flag.
What a visual there, Mr. Wax.
A wild time.
We got to take a quick break, Paul. Thank you so much for joining us. This is the Business Buzz. Thanks to our sponsors, Cayman Insurance Center and Cayman Medical Supplies.
Okay, thank you.
Oh gosh.
Don't let the stress of taking care of loved ones get you down.
Home care, now made easier with Cayman Medical Supplies. 100% Caymanian owned. Cayman Medical Supplies now stocks a wide range of home care supplies. Hospital beds, all types of wheelchairs, including beach access wheelchairs, lifts, commodes, shower chairs, walkers, Curad brand orthopedic supplies. Free blood glucose monitors with the purchase of 1 pack of test strips, blue underpads, and a whole lot more.
Need home care convenience? convenience. Drop by Cayman Medical Supplies at 93 Smith Road, Windward Center, or call 949-6211. Free delivery.
Open 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Still delivering island-wide for your convenience.
Homeowners, protecting your family and property is crucial during the season, and you should always assess insurance needs long before a storm makes landfall. Most insurers won't issue policies when a storm is imminent. Cayman Insurance Center's team of professionals can help owners like you find the most comprehensive coverage and competitive rates. Call Michael Webster today at 925-5433 or Denise Brown at 814-7229. Don't take chances with your family's future or your valuable assets. Call Michael and Denise today at Cayman Insurance Center.
At Kirk's Home Center, we can make your life much better. We got it all together. We got a great deal in store for you. From cookware to stereos, from power tools to plumbing supplies. Yeah, we got the best goods with the best price and a service to make you smile. Kirk's Home Center, we got a great deal in store for you. Business Boss.
Business Boss with your host, Anita Khan.
It's 8 minutes until 9 o'clock. Captain Paul, you're still hanging in there for us?
Yes, I'm still here.
Captain Paul, let's talk about Christmas trees and Christmas decorating the Christmas tree. The first time I came to Cayman, 40-something years ago, we chopped a nice, hefty branch off a castorina, and it became a nice Christmas tree. But you know what? After all these years, I still feel guilty. You know, what happened back in the days? What kind of Christmas tree did you get? How did you decorate them?
Well, we did the castorina tree too, or a branch off of the bigger tree. I remember cousin Richie, that's cousin Lassie's, Miss Lassie's son. I remember one year he got a very small one for us and put it in an old paint can and filled it with sand. And then our mother helped Ella and I to make homemade ornaments from old paper bags or pieces of cloth or even eggshells and
cigarettes,
crepe and construction paper. And we would use our crayons and our water paints. And then even I remember we collected the silver wrappers off of the chewing gum. and that we used to cover the homemade star.
I'm pretty sure they were pretty too.
And then a few times then we were able, if we had the money, to buy some of the tinsel, and just throw it up on the tree. But it was homemade ornaments, and it was just getting together and doing that. It was a lot of fun.
Captain Paul, what do you remember about Christmas trees?
Oh yes, I remember all about up in South Sound, up where the dock is now, up that way. It was thousands and thousands of people used to come up there in cars and cut the trees, take them all over the island. It was what you would call a little farm up there. They used to go up there so fast. They were beautiful. I remember that. Of course, we didn't have any electricity or anything like that, so we made the same decoration and did the same thing. That was but it's one thing I would like to just mention about that. In my day, it was only two bars in Cayman, the Northern Bar and
Captain Ben's?
And Captain Ben's Bar on Shane Road. So it was a gentleman here from St. Vincent, Mr. Brown. He used to make the homemade rum, and he had two of them. Named, one was named Jump Study, and the other was Get Home If You Can. That was made out of cane juice, and they used to put corn about 2 months. It was too much, and it didn't take very much of that to get you happy.
I tell you.
And I'm sure, Cap, there was a little bit of kill me quick in there too.
Oh my goodness!
It was no. There were one or two drunks around the place those days, but nobody had enough money to buy enough to get drunk off of. So one little bottle, everybody was happy.
Everybody's happy. One little body made everybody happy. But I didn't know you made moonshine back in those days. No, I'm pretty sure that at that time, money was limited, of course. So, but people, Caymanians always found the money to pay it down at least for some new clothes. Because throughout the year you don't buy any. Everybody, and it still happens. I do that. I'll wait until Christmas to buy some, But how did that work out back in the days? Did you have like a down payment plan or a layaway plan? Anita, can you remember?
Oh, well, we had very little money. We were very thankful that we had a aunt that was a seamstress that lived in the States, and she would always send us a little package at Christmas time with new dresses. So those were what my sister Ella and I got, and then she would all put little toys in there, or maybe any kind of a little canned ham or turkey or whatever. So those packages coming in. The only thing that I guess we kind of laid away was shoes, because young kids, your feet are growing, and whatever. So she wasn't maybe sure about that. So we would get those like Marin's store.
Well, the main merchants at that time, they would actually go on Christmas shopping trips, probably in middle October, New York, and little do you think about it, they were importing goods from Japan, they were importing goods from Italy, and I'm sure somewhere along the line we have that narrative of how they did this. I'm speaking about it here at Radio Cayman. It was amazing the level of commerce that they were involved in back in those days.
Did you get lots of fabrics and stuff?
Oh
like
yes,
that? Wonderful fabric.
That was the main thing, and at Christmas time also in West Bay there was always a big regatta put on by what was then probably one of the first cooperatives in Cayman. It was called the West Bay Fishermen's, or the Fishermen's Society or Fishermen's Co-op, I think was what it was called. Mr. Bertie Banks, headed it up, and big regattas. People come from all over the island, spend the whole day in West Bay.
Would that be Christmas Day?
Huh?
Would that be on Christmas Day?
Yes.
On Christmas Day?
Well, probably right after Christmas, on Boxing Day was probably it. And, there would be, 10, 15, 20 big catboats racing. And it was a nice little...
Did you have a catboat, Mr. Banks?
I didn't have a catboat, but my grandfather had a big canoe named the Whitefish, which went in some of the races, and there was one gentleman who he made sure to come home every Christmas, Mr. Will Borden. He had a canoe, and he would always put this canoe in this race, and he had so much sail on it. Most seacrafts can only accommodate a certain amount of sail, but he took it to the optimum. For him to get underway, he had to have 2 or 3 people, one on each side of the canoe, and just gently glide it off to a start, and then they would, they would handle it. Captain Dalton used to ride weatherboard for him, and most of the time he won in his class.
Now, going back to the fabric, I want to hear, because last year I wanted to ask this question and I didn't get a chance to do it. You had different catalogs that people would look through and see the latest fashion, right, Captain Paul?
Yeah, that was a big thing in those days. It was Bella's Hess, Walter Field, Sears Roebuck, and National Ballot, and one other one
Montgomery Ward.
Yeah, Montgomery right here.
But the family used to make out an order and send to, because you couldn't buy American checks here, and you send that to us, to the men out at sea, and we would fill it in and send it to places, to these places of business, and they would fill it and send it back home. That was a great something those days. Everybody was waiting for that package to come home from National Dallas Hess or one of those other shopping things.
Yeah.
Was it Amazon or back then?
My mother used those catalogs.
Same process, right? Yeah. Now, the leaves from the catalogs, when you were finished with them, what did you do with those catalogs?
Oh, they were put to good use. That was our toilet paper.
Do you use them for wallpaper as well?
Well, I guess some people did, but most of it was used for toilet paper.
Yeah, well, it was used quite prevalent for wallpaper, because and there was some beautiful pictures in those because they were big catalogs.
Paul, we're going to take a break, and we've made an executive decision that we'll take an additional 5 minutes on the Business Buzz this morning. So it's 2 minutes after 9 o'clock. We're going to take a quick break for the news, and you'll throw it back to us. Captain Paul, please stay on the line, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
From district to district, moving through the waters to Cayman Brac and Little Cayman. Your station, your voice. All things Cayman. One radio, many people. This is home.
Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman.
Your voice, your choice.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
Lawmakers are back in Parliament this morning for Finance Committee to address supplemental appropriations for the budget before the House will resume to tackle private members' motions today. Make sure to tune into our sister station Breeze 105.3 FM to hear the proceedings live. In other news, at least 3 people have died as a powerful winter storm moves east across the United States, spawning tornadoes in southern states and coating others in snow. A young boy and his mother were killed in Louisiana when their home was destroyed by a tornado. The huge storm also brought blizzard-like conditions to the Midwest, with roads and schools closed and some areas reporting 4 feet of snow. Around 3,300 flights have been delayed and more than 150 canceled. And the Thai King's eldest daughter has collapsed from a heart condition on Wednesday evening. Princess, the eldest of the king, collapsed while training her dogs northeast of Bangkok. The 44-year-old was taken to a nearby hospital, then by helicopter to Bangkok, where she's being treated. The palace described her condition last night as, quote, stable to a certain extent. Those are your headlines. I'm Karsley Fuller.
For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky. Business Buzz. Business Buzz with your host, Anita Khan.
4 minutes after 9 o'clock. Good morning. Welcome back. We're sneaking a few extra minutes on the last segment of the Business Buzz for this year. We've got so much to talk about. We've got so many things to, so many recollections, so many memories, and 40 minutes isn't just cutting it this morning. So we're going to take we're going to take the privilege of taking a few minutes, and we're going to start off with Anita. Anita, of Q, you were talking about those memories you had. Tell us about that again.
Oh, well, really, like going into town on Christmas Eve was just so exciting to visit any of the shops there on what we would consider Main Street, Shedden Road, from the waterfront. There would be like the Marin's Variety Stores, the Yankee Notion shop, Dr. Roy's, Miss Iris, I think. Then she had a shop after the bar had closed down. Then Shirley's further up. Then, of course, Rose Variety, Wilco's along the waterfront. But, it was so cool then, and we were able to, to wear like a sweater. Just the smell of the apples and grapes, like you were talking about, the apples coming in on the schooners. And just the sounds of people laughing and talking. the fireball, the little cracker balls, that they were really small, and you would just throw them down on the ground, and they would make a plop, or the firecrackers. It was not many, fireworks or whatever, but and sparklers. And I remember the tall Christmas tree with lots of decorations and lights, really, in Mr. George and Rosemary's front yard. And then just being able to, we had run errands or given pedicures and manicures to some of the older people. So whatever little pennies or threepences we had, or if somebody gifted us a shilling that we saved in our little Friars cocoa piggy bank, we were able to buy, either the apples or the grapes or any of the imported candies and treats, like the Fireball gum and the Sugar Daddy, the Tootsie Roll, Lifesavers, of course, Paradise Plums, Baby Roots, and then the Cracker Jacks with the little prize. And, it just was just so exciting for a young card.
Tootsie Roll, we had Tootsie Roll way back then.
Yeah. They would bring in these special, like you were saying, they would bring in things special for Christmas.
Okay. Now, before I go way over time, I'm already over time, I just want to ask, how important is it to document and preserve the history of the Cayman Islands and to share the various Cayman traditions of long ago with our children? I'll start with Captain Paul. Captain Paul?
Oh, yes, that's very important. A lot of it should be recorded, because it's too much of it is lost, because people don't realize how poor we were and how far we have come. We've come a long way, baby.
Anita?
Yeah, I think it's very important to document and preserve this aspect of kind of intangible cultural heritage, because sadly, those of us born in the 50s and 60s, I think, will be like the last generation to have really experienced a Cayman Christmas, like we've spoken about this morning, and that I've heard on some of the other shows on Radio Cayman throughout the month. And I would like to just end with UNESCO defines intangible as expressions that have been passed from one generation to another, and that it's a kind of living heritage, the wealth of knowledge and skills that's transmitted through from one generation to the next. It really necessitates preservation. The document states that we need to ensure that it remains an active part of today's generation that they can hand on to tomorrow. Because if we don't make it active and living, it's just going, it's good to document it, but that's all it's going to be.
Otherwise, it'll just die. Mr. Banks?
Yeah, well, I think Anita kind of capsulized it pretty well there, but it's important, if we don't know where we've been and we're trying to plot a path forward, we'll liable to get lost in the dark. And I think we're probably 150 years, 200 years behind on really putting this historical and cultural aspect of the Cayman Islands community where it can be accessed and, as Anita said, become a living element within our society, or the whole Caymanian culture and heritage. And what we see here today was built on, all of the concrete and whatever else you want to include in it. It was built on that foundation that was established here by our forefathers when the population was 5, 6, 7,000. And I think the Christian heritage, is somehow getting pushed aside, and I think that the churches could do a little bit more with trying to keep that alive at a higher element, and but we do what we can, and hopefully that we'll. But there is a lot that is recorded. The archives have got a lot of stuff there, but the access to it, I think, is sometimes quite challenging, and that is one of the aspects that need to be updated. And with today's technology, in fact, a lot of the stuff that you heard on what some of the stuff you heard on this program this morning, that was on reel-to-reel tape. Over the years, I have tried to digitalize some of this stuff, and because if it stays on reel-to-reel tape, it'll just dust away and it'll be lost. 5 years ago, Alston called me up and said he had a tape that had been recorded. A tape that had been recorded in I think he thought late 50s or early 60s, and took it in the archives. Archives couldn't do anything with it.
Wow.
He called us up here, called me up, and I said, well, bring it over to us, and we were able to digitalize that whole thing, and it's a tape that somebody sat down with Mr. Roddy Watler, who at the time, now this is going back to the 60s, 40s, 60s, he was probably up in his late 60s or early 70s. Might have been even 80s. I'm not sure how long he lived. But I think it's about an hour and a half that he sat down and just talked about all things. You heard him talking about digging gold in Cayman, finding gold.
Oh, yeah, that would happen during my time, too.
Yes.
Wow.
And he evidently, or he just about, and I doubt whether there's any other documentation around on it, but he specifically laid out the whole process in it, and some, hopefully that we'll be able to excerpt some stuff out of that and bring it to life here on Radio Cayman in the future.
And speaking of bringing to life, Paul, we have another clip, a final clip that Mr. Banks took out of his Wattle and Daub, Mr. Banks?
The Wattle Vault.
Wattle Vault, okay. Where's Wattle Vault? Can you spin it for us? Thank you.
Maybe a nice cross and a gold chain.
Oh, I'd love to get a nice 450 SL Mercedes-Benz, which I don't think I'll get, but I'd love to get that.
I'd like to have a nice bracelet and a bunch of nice stuff, doesn't really matter.
Gold.
Yes, of course.
Possible a TV set, a colored one, I hope.
Well, hopefully I'll be getting a new car.
A 1980s Toyota Corolla, a trip around the world.
That was 45 years ago, a short example of what folks in the Cayman Islands community were hoping to receive for Christmas. And I didn't think we had Corolla then, Mr. Banks, but song so. Yeah.
Bringing it in on the Goldfield.
Okay. Now, Captain Paul, we have to go. So anything you'd like to add to the conversation this morning?
Well, I could talk all morning, but I know you don't have the time, so
I'm already in trouble.
Yeah,
I can only get in trouble one time.
My old big boss, I'm always getting in trouble. I wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year when it comes.
Captain Paul, the very same to you, and you stay safe. And God's willing, we'll have a chat in the new year.
Okay.
Anita, anything you'd like to leave with our listeners this morning?
Like Uncle Paul, wishing you all the best too for Christmas and the New Year. Yeah, I could talk about, like Boxing Day celebrations and garden parties and Cayman, the New Year's watch services. That was all new to us and exciting to go in my aunt's and Uncle Val's old car. I can't remember what kind or my uncle then, when Uncle Booth got a Studebaker, or the various Miss Sybil and those would sometime, the Christian Endeavor, they would go to, to the East End or Bordentown, and just the Junkanoo and all the happenings at these Boxing Day celebrations, stuff that we've kind of lost, and the delicious food, we didn't have too much, but we were able to buy like maybe one meal, and Ella and I would share it or whatever, or some just visiting family in North Side, riding our bikes. I remember riding our bikes to with our friends that had a grandmother in Newlands, and seeing her catch a chicken and prepare it.
You rode all the way to Newlands?
Yeah,
nice.
Yeah. And riding through where the monument was in
Prospect.
In Prospect, that was still there.
It's
you
still
know,
there.
it was just so new and exciting, and just yeah.
Mr. Banks?
Yeah, well, I think the religious aspect played a very, very important role in our Christmas celebrations, and so many things that we would probably like to have mentioned here as one, but just time does not permit it. And I'm sure that some of the more extended programs that we did back in the late 70s, so forth, hopefully that maybe we can bring them back up, and which would take us back 220 years, because those folks at that time, when we recorded most of these in 1977, 78, 79, some of them was 80, 85 years old at the time, and they were bringing back memories from what they've heard from their grandfathers, so it stretched all the way back. And you've heard just a little tidbit of it here on the program this morning.
Mr. Banks, I want to say thank you so much, Anita. Thank you, Captain Paul. Thank you. Oh, he's gone. Okay, thank you, Captain Paul. I know you're still listening. It's been quite an interesting morning on the final buzz for 2022. I'd like to say thanks to all of our guests for participating and sharing with our listeners about recollections of Cayman Islands Christmases of long ago. I think on Friday, OC, for the record, will be having his recollections as well. So I'm pretty sure everybody's got their finger on the phone ready to dial. Again, many thanks to Anita Banks, former museum director, Mr. Luxie Banks, former director of Radio Cayman, and the current host of Cayman Islands CI Retro, that is. And of course, Captain Paul Hulston, who joined us by telephone this morning. A heartfelt thank you as well to all of the guests who appeared on our show this past year, and our various sponsors who made the Business Buzz possible. Without you, we could not do it. We appreciate it very much. To our listeners, viewers, the producer of The Buzz, Susan Watson, thank you. Susan and I are sending best wishes your way for a safe and joyous Christmas and a super, super fabulous new year ahead. Thanks to Paul in the studio for holding it down. Thank you, Paul. I'm Anita Khan. Thanks for the extension of The Buzz this morning. Let's call it 19 minutes. I'm Anita Khan. The Business Buzz will be back on January 10th, 2023, God's willing. It's a wrap from The Buzz for this year. Thank you so much.
The Business Buzz is proudly sponsored by Cayman Medical Supplies. Call them at 949-6211. And Cayman Insurance Center, celebrating 45 years in the Cayman Islands, specializing in property, life, and other lines of insurance products and services. And 345 Equipment, quality machinery, parts, and repair services for all of your construction equipment needs. Call 525-0021 or email info